one of my favorites of the War for American Independence. And I'm not a revisionist historian. I should have probably said the Revolution, but I just want to make sure people understand there's no connection between what happened in 1775, 1776 in America and what happened in France that was called the French Revolution. Samuel Adams. You know what's sad? If you go onto the streets hard, when you're in Harvard Square later on, I want you to ask some of the people, have you heard of Samuel Adams? Well, yes, of course, and you'll be enthused until you find out that most of them will say, he's the guy that's got the beer company. But Samuel Adams said, if ye love wealth greater than liberty, the tranquility of servitude better than the animating contest for freedom, go home and leave us in peace. We seek not your counsel, nor your arms. Crouch down and lick the hand that feeds you, and may posterity forget that you were our countrymen. And I want to tell you something, as a Patriot pastor, I hold that view. Now, that may seem pretty radical to some people, but I guess when you consider what some people said about the Founding Fathers, they were considered pretty radical. When you look at some of our foundational documents, which obviously many of the people that are in our so-called government have very little familiarity with, you look at things, for example, as the Articles of Confederation of the United Colonies of New England, and that's from 1643. Oh no, here he goes. He's going to talk about all this old-fashioned stuff. Well, excuse me. Our Founding Fathers weren't trying to do something old-fashioned. They were trying to do the right fashion that would stay from generation to generation. It says, whereas we all came into these parts of America with one and the same end and aim, namely, to advance the kingdom of our Lord Jesus Christ and to enjoy the liberties, is that word again, of the gospel in purity with peace. That was a very important founding document. Let's skip ahead a little bit to another very important founding document, and I put this out as a challenge to every American today. It's called the Declaration of American Independence. Some people call it the Birth Certificate of America. Well, I beg to differ with them. This is not, in my estimation, the Birth Certificate of America. I believe that it is what it says. It's the Declaration of American Independence. In a sense, that would be like coming of age and declaring independence, in a sense, from your family, your birth family, and going out on your own in a mature way. I believe the Birth Certificate of America was signed in 1620 in Provincetown Harbor, called the Mayflower Compact. But my challenge to you and to every American today is, would you risk your life, almost as if to sign in blood, and sign this document? One of the most important documents ever in the history of the world, and very few Americans even know that. People in other parts of the world know that. They knew that in Tiananmen Square years ago when their own government ran them over with tanks. And one of the most important phrases ever codified in any foundational document the world over is in the second paragraph, where it says that they are endowed. Okay, let me go back. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain what? Unalienable rights. That among these are what? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. I'm not going to read the whole of that document, obviously, but I also point out to you that at the end of that document, what was pledged? And will you pledge as they pledged? Your sacred honor, your possessions, yes, in your very life, paraphrasing what they actually said there, and submit that pledge to divine providence. And that wasn't some New Age terminology. These people, remember, did not really foresee a time when people would have no respect for God, the God of the Bible and His Word. And then I draw your attention to one of the first mentions of liberty in our Constitution, in the preamble. One of the things that our Constitution is supposed to do is to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to who? Our posterity. And by the way, when I was on the Village Green a couple of weeks ago in Lexington doing a filming, some people came up to me who were of Asian descent and they had become citizens of our country. And I asked them, did you know that 77 good Christian men, led by a pastor, led by a deacon, fought on this green? 8 of them died. And they died for you. And they looked at me and said, what? They were Christians? Oh, yes, they were. And they died for me? How's that? Well, if you have now become an American citizen, you are their what? Posterity. And by the way, when I've used this in many public places, oh, that's not very nice of you to say posterity. Excuse me, what do you mean? Well, that's somebody's bum, and you shouldn't talk about that. And anyone thinks about the dumbing down of America? So I don't know posterior from posterity? That's pretty sad, isn't it? I live now in New Hampshire. We have an interesting article in our Bill of Rights in the New Hampshire Constitution. In fact, every political candidate that's ever come through New Hampshire, anywhere that I go, I carry that Constitution, I give it to them, and I read to them Article 10. You remember that one, Howard? The right to revolution, excuse me, the right of revolution. Now that sounds pretty heavy and pretty heady, but please understand what it really says about government. Government being instituted for the common benefit, protection, and security of the whole community, and not for the private interest or emolument of any one man, family, or class of men. Therefore, whenever the ends of government are perverted and public liberty, there's that word again, manifestly endangered, and all other means of redress are ineffectual, the people may, and of a right ought to, reform the old or establish a new government. The doctrine of non-resistance against arbitrary power and oppression is absurd, slavish, and destructive of the good and happiness of mankind. Now, why have I come here dressed like this today? Not because my mama dresses me funny. I got some other clothes I could be wearing, but I applaud men like Kevin Thompson, Tom Fallon, that would step out and understand what government is supposed to be about, even though that's going to cost them, it's a great challenge, it's a difficulty, and so forth and so on. But I think they know this. He who would make his own liberty secure must guard even his enemy from oppression, for if he violates the duty, he establishes a precedent that will reach to himself. That was written and said by Thomas Paine, who, you know, wrote Common Sense. My ancestors, actually, some of them were in the publishing business. They published that. Bad rap on Benjamin Franklin. One of my favorite quotes with him, coming out in 1787 from the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia. Dr. Franklin, what have you given us? A republic, if you can keep it. Well, folks, we're not keeping it. Most people don't even know that we are a republic. They're always using mobocracy. Excuse me, I meant to say democracy. Samuel Adams, I referenced him before. He wrote to another great patriot, James Warren, great Christian man. No people will tamely surrender their liberties, nor can any be easily subdued when knowledge is diffused, and virtue is preserved. On the contrary, when people are universally ignorant and debauched in their manners, they will sink under their own weight without the aid of foreign invaders. Were these people prophets or what? They were prophesying. I don't know that they knew that, but they really were. How many of you like Patrick Henry? He was a great Christian man. You know, his address to his own children before he died is so touching. But he said, guard with jealous attention the public liberty. Suspect everyone who approaches that jewel. Unfortunately, nothing will preserve it but downright force. Whenever you give up that force, you are inevitably ruined. And I honestly believe there are two men standing in this room that are running for office in government who will not approach the public liberty, and that we could trust them. Liberty is a word which, according as it has been used, comprehends the most good and the most evil of any in the world. Justly understood, it is sacred next to those which we appropriate in divine adoration. But in the mouths of some, it means anything which enervate unnecessary government, excited jealousy of the rulers who are of our own choice, and keep society in confusion for want of a power